Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me. Troy Goldie, marriage officer, and again, another vlog in the series of vlogs that I'm doing about the legal requirements of getting married in South Africa. And today we're going to look at what is the documentation that you need if you're a South African citizen or a South African ID book holder getting married to a non-South African or a non-South African ID book holder. These are the documents that you're going to need, and it's a different set of rules to the others that we've looked at, whether you're two South Africans or two foreigners getting married in South Africa. Unfortunately, with a South African marrying a non-South African, you've got another set of rules and an immigration process that needs to be undertaken. So let me go through this with you quickly. It is important that you realize that the South African ID holder, now whether it's the card or the book, if you've been issued with a South African ID number, even if you're not a citizen of the country, you would need to get married in South Africa with that, using that number, using that ID. You cannot choose to use a passport and get married under that passport because you have got a South African ID document. Very important. Then again, you would also need to have a certified copy of your SA ID or ID card that is given to me as the marriage officer. You would also require to get the passport of the person that is the non-South African passport or ID card holder. So in other words, the photograph page of their particular ID, passport, as well as the last entry stamp into the country. Now, the last entry stamp is important because that verifies for South African Home Affairs that you are actually legally in the country. So it's a copy of the photograph page as well as the entry stamp. Now, because you are also a non-South African that's marrying in South Africa but to a South African citizen, you would need to supply proof of the fact that you're not legally married anywhere else in the world. Now, for that, you would need a letter of no impediment. Now, a letter of no impediment or a certificate of single status or whatever you want to call it is a document that is issued by the country from which that person comes. And that document proves that you are not legally married in that country. Please keep in mind that the letter of no impediment is issued, and it must be issued in English. If it's not in English, it needs to be translated and has to be officially translated and verified to be a true translation of that particular document. So that you would need to supply, please, for the wedding to take place. Now, the letter of no impediment is a document that would be supplied and apostilled by the government, as I said. But keep in mind that there's one exception to this, and that is anybody coming from the UK. Any UK citizen getting married in South Africa will not get access to a letter of no impediment because the British government does not issue that document. So what you would need to do is you would need to get a letter from the British consulate which basically states that they don't issue a letter of no impediment. Here's an example of what it looks like. It's a very easy document to get, and all you would do is you'd simply go ahead and get it from the consulate. But don't worry too much about that because that is a fairly easy process. The immigration interview process is very straightforward and simple. However, it is complicated simply because of a time issue. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to physically go to Home Affairs together with all the documents that are required, copies of your IDs, SA ID book, entry stamp, letters of no impediment, all those documents, copies of decrees of divorce, everything that is required, you would physically have to take to Home Affairs to make the appointment. But an additional document that is required is a letter of referral from your marriage officer. So I would supply that letter stating that I am the marriage officer that's going to marry you on a specific date at a specific place. That document you also give to Home Affairs. They will then give you an appointment. The appointment is a date that you'll come back. It could be a week, 2 weeks time, it just depends. You would then go back to Home Affairs as a couple, and they would then interview separately, both of you, so that you would then be able to, well, they would be able to determine whether you're marrying for the right reasons, for love, or whether it's a marriage of convenience. So if you've got nothing to worry about, you've got nothing to worry about. They're not going to try and trick you. It's simply to ask you questions about the relationship and to verify that you guys are in a relationship. Once that interview's been done, and they give you the green light, you would then obviously be clear to get married. But guys, keep in mind, all of the documentation that you've supplied to Home Affairs, that original documentation will need to come to me, and I will need to supply that together with the register to Home Affairs for the actual registration of the marriage. So just keep in mind, do not ever give Home Affairs your original copies of any of the documents. Always give them a copy. And every time you go to Home Affairs, take another set of copies, just in case they've misplaced or lost your documents. Alright, so these are the documents again, just to go through it. A copy of the passport of the non-South African citizen, a copy of their entry stamp, a SA ID book or ID card of the South African, a letter of no impediment from the person that is not a South African. Unless it's a British subject, then they would need a letter from the British Embassy or Consulate to prove that they are not able to get a letter. Then I would also supply a BI 31, which is the declaration for the purpose of marriage. That is a document that would be signed on the day of the wedding, and that would be another verification of the fact, or a declaration to the fact that you're not legally married in any other country. But that document, it will be supplied by myself, so you don't have to worry about it. 3 ID size photographs of both you and your fiance, because that gets attached to the register. And then obviously, very important, don't forget the 2 witnesses that are going to sign the register. You would need to supply me with a passport copy and entry stamp, or the South African ID document if they are South African. So it sounds complicated. It is a little bit complicated, not from a process point of view, but simply from a time perspective. So please guys, if you are in the situation of a non-South African marrying a South African in South Africa, it's best to get in contact with me personally, and I will be able to talk you through that process so that you fully understand what are the ups and downs, the pitfalls and the difficulties of that situation. But it's not impossible, and a lot of couples get married that are South African to non-South Africans here in South Africa. So if you're that couple, get in contact with me. My contact details are on screen now. Troy Goldie, Marriage Officer, my cell number, my email address, and you're more than welcome to contact me. Until next time guys, thanks very much for joining me. Hope it was interesting and informative. Cheers.